He was very charismatic. Initially, he was very romantic. The relationship moved quickly, and I felt that I'd been swept off my feet.
But Alice's excitement quickly turned to fear. We've changed her name to protect her identity.
I remember the first night he ever completely lost it with me. His face was in my face. He was screaming. He started punching things in the kitchen, breaking the doors. But during those periods, like when he lost his temper, I just think, I don't know if I'm going to get out of this night alive.
Months passed, and every day Alice found herself walking on eggshells. And she felt ill too, sick and dizzy, enough to go to the GP, who couldn't explain her symptoms. Then one day, she noticed that the cup of tea her husband handed to her tasted completely off.
It tasted exactly like all the horrible cups of tea that I'd had previously, but much, much worse. So I instinctively sort of spat it out, and there was something about his agitated, like quite suspicious behaviour that I thought, hang on a minute, and I tipped it out, and then at the bottom of this cup of tea was like white sediment, and I was like, what's this? And he laughed. I'd been doing it to you for ages and that you haven't even noticed. He turned it into a joke.
Nearly 7,000 incidents of spiking were reported to police in England and Wales between 2022 and 2023. In 2021, 7% of incidents happened on private premises. But a charity called Stamp Out Spiking says that 97% of all cases go unreported.
We know at Victim Support that spiking in domestic settings is something that is happening across the country. It's happening throughout our services, but we've got no way of monitoring it or tracking it. There's no data available to find out the scale on which this is occurring. So I think as a first step, we really need to get to the bottom of what's happening, and then we can take steps to actually address it.
Most people associate spiking with this kind of scene: nighttime, bars, pubs and clubs. And data certainly seems to support that. Recent figures show that 80% of spiking incidents happen in public places, and particularly at nighttime. But campaigners say the wider conversation around spiking is missing out what's happening in domestic settings.
Cannabis, legal highs and Viagra. Alice would never have linked the sound of her husband's vitamin grinder to this drug concoction, but she suspects it's what he was putting into her tea.
I remember sitting down on a Sunday night and the TV started to like move around the room, and I felt really, really sick and giddy. I just crawled up the stairs to bed. I was having all these bizarre physical symptoms that I just put down to other things like hallucinating. On some days I would get a racing heart. Sometimes that came with a feeling that I couldn't breathe. I've woken up with a throat full of vomit, and that's really scary because I was choking.
These are the kinds of offences that are identified as spiking, so you can see that there's different things that are included.
Channel 4 News approached multiple agencies asking for data on drugging in domestic settings, but most don't record it. So we took the available figures on spiking to Dr. Amy Burrell, who researches violence against women and girls.
So you can have a really good piece of data in one place, a really good piece of data somewhere else, and it's because you can't overlap it or you can't carve it up in a way that allows you to look at very specific contexts in which things happen or particular groups in which crimes happen against. That can make it very difficult then to answer those very specific questions about how do we keep women safe in a domestic space, because we don't have the data to back that up.
We hear a lot about spiking in nighttime spaces, clubs and pubs. We hear so much less about spiking that happens in the home. Do you think that the cultural conversation needs to shift?
That domestic space, it's not regulated. You know, if you're in the nighttime economy, you've got, Security Industry Authority accredited door staff, you've got venue staff, you've got the police, you've got the ambulance service. If you're in a more private space or a more informal space, that oversight isn't always there, and that creates a vulnerability then.
Alice tells us she felt humiliated and ashamed, and that her life was in danger. For that reason, she stayed in the relationship. Her husband, the perpetrator, eventually left.
Did you think about going to the police?
I don't think I really thought of it as something that was relevant to the police. And part of it, I guess, when you're in a situation like that, you're basically trying to survive. And I think if I tried to preserve a crime scene in that moment and I'd picked up the phone and called the police, I would probably be in danger.
Justice, go, please! Justice, go, please!
Gisele Pelicot's case uncovered unimaginable horrors and reinforced what so many women already know. Even home can be dangerous. Dominique Pelicot was found guilty, along with 50 other men, of drugging and raping his wife in their home. That the violence could be secret, unknown to the woman, and perpetrated by an intimate partner felt like a terrifying, unexplored wilderness.
What was it like for you to see the Gisele Pelicot case come up?
It was almost like a victory for all women, because without the burden of having to be believed, she stood up and shone a light into the darkness, into this sexual depravity and this need for people to control other people. I don't have justice, but I have got peace.
At the moment, spiking doesn't have its own legislation, but the government is set to introduce a new law to make it a specific criminal offence. And campaigners say awareness is crucial too, that women recognise this might be happening to them.
It's like the banality of evil, isn't it? It's like what goes on in people's houses. He basically destroyed me up until a certain point, and I was like a shell of a person, but he didn't finish me off.
Priya Chatterjee there. And if you or anyone you know is affected by issues around domestic violence or spiking, you can find a range of resources at channel4.com/support.